After the 1st of July 2026, Slovakia will assume the presidency of the Visegrad Group. I would like to announce in advance that we will be exceptionally active, and we will do everything possible to ensure that the V4 once again regains the strength it used to have in the past, a strength that lay in the ability of the 4 EU member states to formulate their own positions and stances, which were capable of influencing the internal life of Brussels. I can say that following the senseless ideological decision of the European Commission to adopt IPAU and to halt the flows of Russian gas after the 1st of January 2028, the Czech Republic will be an exceptionally important transit territory for us for the transport of gas to the territory of the Slovak Republic. For this reason, I approached the Prime Minister and identified 2 important projects related to gas. I believe that the relevant ministers will be able to address this issue at a joint meeting of the governments, which I have already announced. I also informed the Prime Minister about transport-related projects in which we are fulfilling our commitments to the extent of the possibilities available to us.
Prime Minister Fico, from your perspective, you speak of war cabinets, so have you clarified which type of projections are actually being discussed, whether they are war-related or peace-related? And Prime Minister Babis, are you planning in the near future to travel to Ukraine, similar to what your Foreign Minister, Mr. Machinka, is preparing to do? My question to you, Prime Minister Fico, are you planning to travel there, perhaps accompanied by diplomats, for example, to Kiev, setting aside your meetings in Uzhhorod? Thank you.
I don't recall ever speaking about a peace initiative. I, of course, attended that meeting to find out what it was actually about. It was represented at a high level, mostly by American negotiators, Kushner and Witkoff, and a declaration was proposed. And if you want to call it willing or something, of all those present, the ones willing to send soldiers to Ukraine were only 2, Macron and Starmer. They also signed the protocol. So it was an open debate. A protocol was proposed outlining some ideas for arrangements in Ukraine after a ceasefire. But we didn't learn when the ceasefire would occur or what the prospects were. I was glad to be there because I naturally met and spoke with Mark Rutte and other European statesmen. So it was a valuable experience. Austria was there as an observer, and some other states were not fully involved. But most of the countries commented on the protocol with reservations, noting that parliamentary approval would be required, and the majority of states refused to send troops to Ukraine. The protocol was ultimately signed by France, the UK, and President Zelensky. And of course, a key role is played by President Trump. Without him, it simply won't work. One prime minister even spoke there, Edi Rama, a legendary figure, who asked why Europe isn't negotiating with Putin, since Europe, Zelensky, America, and Russia are involved. In essence, I attended to see what it was about, but it was not the subject of our discussion here, because we have far more important tasks ahead of us.
I have repeated our positions 100 times over. First, Slovakia will never send a soldier to Ukraine in the multinational military forces that are to operate on Ukrainian territory. You may have heard the statement saying that every foreign soldier on Ukrainian territory will be a legitimate target in this war. Are we going to provoke a conflict with the Russian Federation, or are we actually going to settle for peace? Slovakia will never donate any weapons to Ukraine. The previous government donated so many weapons that it practically exhausted the entire military arsenal of the Slovak Republic, and now we have to replenish it for a lot of money. No weapons. The only thing I can imagine is that the Slovak Republic, as a neighboring country to Ukraine, could participate in monitoring a ceasefire or some peace agreement. But again now I will exercise the right to free speech. I am convinced that honest efforts are being sabotaged in peace negotiations. Honestly, and there is no sincere interest in ending this conflict with peace as quickly as possible. All the steps being taken suggest that the conflict will continue for many more months in Ukraine at the cost of tremendous human losses if a Russian or Ukrainian life means nothing to someone. To me, a Russian and a Ukrainian life has the same value as the life of a French, American, Italian, Slovak, Spanish, German, or any other soldier. Therefore, it is not good news for me if someone says that 5,000 people were injured or killed on one side of this war conflict. I had a meeting with the president of Ukraine, where two different worlds met. Until now, the president has not understood Zelensky, why the Slovak Republic does not agree with Ukraine's membership in NATO. I explained to him in vain that it is not our decision because the Americans resolved the issue of Ukraine's membership in NATO by ensuring that Ukraine will not be in NATO. We claim that the fact that Ukraine will not be a NATO member state is a fundamental prerequisite for any peaceful settlement after the end of this military conflict. On the other hand, I appreciate that I went through important bilateral discussions with President Zelensky on the matters of Slovak-Ukrainian relations. Therefore, I prefer mutually beneficial bilateral relations with Ukraine. If I went to Paris, I would have to repeat the same thing. No soldier, no weapons, no war loan. I want to hear the word peace. The only thing we are prepared for is a monitoring mission, because we do have linguistic proximity. We know each other. You know, Mr. Editor, in those first hours of the crisis, our people not only opened their arms in Slovakia, our people also opened their hearts and homes. They sheltered Ukrainians, gave them food. A large number of Ukrainians work in Slovakia today and live under the full protection of the Slovak Republic. If I take the share of aid relative to GDP, we are among the countries with the greatest assistance provided to Ukraine as such. But again, I am convinced that what is currently happening is not leading to peace. Is it the prolongation of the conflict? Because someone still believes in a strategy that is wrong and bad, that through prolonging the war with constant financial support, political and other support to Ukraine, it will lead to the weakening of the Russian Federation. This strategy is mistaken. It is mistaken and will lead only to hundreds of thousands of dead people. I could easily sign an agreement with you now that we might still be standing here in December. The only difference will be that the Russians will be farther away and there will be 500,000 dead. What would we achieve with that? Who is this all good for? So, I have a fundamentally different view on the war in Ukraine. Fundamentally different. I make use of the freedom that I am a long-time Prime Minister, and I express these views, as you hear them now, openly everywhere, and I have never been ashamed of them, and I will continue to express them wherever possible. As far as the war conflict is concerned, in my view on what constitutes a war cabinet and what does not, we are very mistaken if we believe that through the war in Ukraine, the greatest victim of this war is Ukraine. Someone is settling scores with the Russian Federation. This is the greatest mistake, and unfortunately, Ukrainians will primarily pay for this mistake. But of course, in this struggle, a huge number of people are also falling on the other side. It is massive. It is a huge damage. It is a huge mistake. It is a huge blunder.